Welcome to Brotherhood, a spoiler-filled podcast where we review each episode of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. My name is Dylan MacArthur, the older brother.
My name is Timothy MacArthur, the taller brother.
Today's episode, Cold Flame.
If you've been dreaming of a knight in shining armor, take a closer look. It might be Barry the Chopper. Also, if it is Barry the Chopper, you probably need to change your preferences of what a knight in shining armor should be.
Alright, so I guess since you're the one who took notes this time, why don't you start us off? What's the first thing that you want to talk about for this episode?
The blue is ugly, but I don't care.
Oh gosh, no!
I mean, I understand why you hate it. I just don't feel anything about it at all.
It's a total clash. It's
It is.
Okay, the one thing that I will concede about the intro is that by sheer force of repetition, I've come to appreciate the music because it's what plays when I start to watch Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah, that's basically what happened to me.
This is kind of what happens to anything that repeats. You come to associate a sense of security and nostalgia with that thing. And I still don't think that it actually suits the show. I've come to appreciate it because that's what happens when things repeat.
The man who interrogates Ross at the very beginning of the episode does a great job of being one of those kinds of characters who I just want to give damage to, particularly to his face.
Yet again, an example of how not to do an interrogation. But then again, it's also made fairly clear, not just through the script, but also through the visuals of the scene, that this is clearly being stacked against her favor.
It isn't an actual interrogation. It's just a hunt. They're just doing it, and they're letting her know that she's being hunted, basically.
The blonde interrogation guy from this episode kind of reminds me of Harvey Bullock from Batman the Animated Series.
In the sense that he was meant to be punched in the face.
Well, I mean, you don't like this guy, but he's not a bad guy. Or at least I don't think he's a bad guy.
He doesn't seem like a very nice guy to me.
He can be vicious and cruel, but he's not on the side of the capital B bad guys of this show. I get the impression that he genuinely believes that he is doing the quote right thing, but that also happens to be vicious and mean. I just really appreciate when we have characters who are not totally good or not totally bad. You know, they sort of sit in between and they add conflict in a way that is interesting and they keep the story going.
Okay, I don't think they did a good job of that flashback of Hughes' wife crying. I mean, it wasn't the worst they could have done, but it definitely was not their best work.
Part of the problem with it is that it feels so sudden. If you've been watching the show, it doesn't feel justified as to why you would need this flashback. So it sort of sticks out as like this random superfluous thing.
There's a part where Winry is basically seems to be beating up Al over something. And my response is, Winry, you do realize you're beating Al over you being nice, right?
Well, that's what she does. That's kind of her thing. She likes thinking of herself as a tough girl, which she kind of is.
She kind of is, but she also seems a little cuckoo for coconuts. Anyway, when Barry the Chopper is invading that one prison in order to break Ross' prison. Yeah. Apparently, even the laws of physics are at least somewhat afraid of Barry the Chopper.
You're gonna have to explain that.
Because you see at one point that a bullet goes through his armor, but when he's in the prison, apparently they don't. Maybe it's that his armor isn't particularly reinforced around the hands.
I'll be honest, I did not notice that. I was kind of wrapped up in the drama because we've had kind of a slow period of episodes over the past few weeks where we've gotten new characters, we've gotten new things, but not really a whole lot has happened. And it becomes pretty clear early on in this episode that things are about to get real. Stuff is about to hit the proverbial fan. Fun fact, this is the first episode in a long time to feature a shot of an actual fan. I don't know if that was intentional. I doubt it was. This is the episode where stuff hits the fan. It's the first episode in a long time that we've seen one.
The ceiling fan?
Yeah, the ceiling fan, which I noticed this time around is actually CG.
I did not really look closely enough to notice that.
There are a lot of mixed elements here. So, for example, there's a shot early on of a kitchen sink, which you would typically expect to be completely painted because there are no moving parts whatsoever. And yet, for some reason, the dishes are all drawn, which I thought was a little bit interesting. And I started noticing all sorts of details like this, like the kitchen sink, like the fan, throughout the opener that started to, sort of signal to me, oh, so this is where their budget went. We've had a few lackluster episodes beforehand so that they could really throw everything in the kitchen sink at, what is clearly going to be one of their favorite episodes of the quote unquote season, because for some reason it's divided into seasons on Netflix. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. Back
to Barry the Chopper. This is where stuff starts to pick up. For one thing, because we know that for whatever reason, Barry the Chopper is kind of a ladies' man, which is a weird thing to think about, but he kind of is. And so...
Yeah, he kind of is. He's a crazy ladies' man. Will probably chop you up if you, I don't know, marry him or something.
It's strange to think that, here's supposed to be one of the most famous serial killers in Amestris, and...
also a butcher.
Oh, yeah, also a butcher. But more importantly, a serial killer. And yet I'm finding myself swooning whenever he takes an interest in a new female character. It's like, oh, the romance. He finds out that Ross has been convicted of murdering General Hughes. And he's like, I don't like this. And so he goes to rescue her. And dude, that is so exciting. We have the alchemists, our beloved brothers, who, I don't know, they're struggling to find motivation. This is a thing that we'll talk about in another episode, how the filmmakers clearly were having a hard time giving them a strong motivation and sort of kind of try to make them doubt what they're doing, and it kind of works in a bit of a stalling.
I think the problem was that they were very confused, and so were the writers.
Which I get. I know why they were trying to do that, because they want to create moral conflict. They want to create internal conflict with the brothers. It slows the story down. It removes a ton of momentum when our characters say outright, I don't know what to do. What should I do?
Yeah, they were the characters themselves kind of acted like brick walls in this episode. They might as well have been brick walls. I mean, we don't get that much of Alphonse or even Ed in this episode, I think.
But it's all okay, because we're getting a Zulu-like tension built up to the midpoint climax. Again, a thing that I'll talk about later, when they all come to a crashing head. But in the meantime, Barry the Chopper, he's here to save his gal. Anything else you have to say about that?
Apparently Ross really, really thinks her parents are awesome. That's about it.
And this is why I'm kind of sad that Team Rocket didn't really get much of any character development when they were introduced. Because now that she's in personal danger, man, I love this gal. She is so good.
Especially, she is an amazing character.
In the next episode, I feel for her.
Yeah, I have another response for when we get to the part with Mustang.
Okay, what do you have to say about Mustang?
Mustang! Oh, snap! You're a jerk!
Oh, he is so cold. The expression on his face is cold. The shots around him are cold. You'll notice that when he's in the alleyway, he is the blue figure surrounded by warmth. He is surrounded by people who love him and who care about him and who he is supposedly caring for.
Oh, now I see why they named it Cold Flame.
Yep, that's why.
I should have known that sooner.
Is there anything else that you want to say about that particular moment?
Nothing.
When do you think, in terms of time, when do you think this scene occurs in the episode?
I think it was pretty close to the end, actually.
Is that your final guess?
I mean,
it is the climax.
I think it was pretty close to the end. I mean, it's close to when my notes end.
It's about halfway through the episode.
What?
In fact, it is exactly halfway through the episode. Everything that happens after that takes up the exact same amount of time as what happened before.
Holy crap.
And see, this is where our whole familiarity with 3-act structure kind of goes to our disadvantage, because we are used to the most interesting scene being at the end. And this makes the very Aristotelian decision of putting the most interesting scene smack dab in the center. I actually think that this is a problem for Full Metal Alchemist, primarily because it is a serial. You need your most interesting hook to be at the end so that we can say, oh, I've got to tune in next time. I've got to see what happens next. And instead...
Yet.
To be fair, some episodes benefit from having a strong resolution where we see how all of the characters react to this, but generally you want the resolution to be fairly quick and fairly succinct. The resolution of this episode is basically the second half, and the episode does suffer. This is skipping ahead a little bit, but when Armstrong says to him, I am sorry for doubting you, and you have the little pan up and realize that he's furious with this man and would love nothing more than to just beat him to a bloody pulp. And Colonel Mustang responds with just the most savage thing about how, you should really go out east. There are lots of pretty women out there.
No comment.
You just want to smack the guy.
No comment. And I have something to talk about the second half. What the freak is with all the kidnapping?
Who all is kidnapped? I forget.
Edward by Armstrong.
Okay.
I don't care if you're one of the protagonists, Sir Armstrong. You should get a deduction in rank or be fired. Mostly because I think a jail would not hold you, for obvious reasons, and because trying to kill you would simply take too many resources.
I was able to forgive Armstrong kidnapping Edward in a way that I wasn't able to forgive Hughes from kidnapping basically everyone.
Because Armstrong's already is weird all around, whereas he is sometimes normal, sometimes weird.
But more importantly, because Armstrong is clearly doing it because that's what a soldier does. A soldier follows his commands, no matter what those commands happen to be. This is something that has
insane. We're doing it, but okay.
Yeah, but this is something that has been pounded into us from episode 4, the Chimera episode, that what you do when you are in the military is you follow orders, no matter what. This gives our characters a certain culpability that we can, to a certain degree, forgive them for doing things that would be otherwise slightly morally heinous because it's what they were told to do. You may not forgive them completely. You may completely disagree with their morals and think, you really should have fought that. But you can at least understand why they did it.
Okay. Oh, and Riza seems very mad at Mustang. Especially with that door slam at the end. Nice patch.
I freaking love this girl. So good. I love how,
Yeah, I can see, you totally have a crush on this fictional character.
Both times watching the scene where she slams the door on Mustang, even though I know it's fictional, and even though I know that there are zero consequences to this, I still found myself thinking to myself, oh, dang.
She mad.
Now I get to show my hand and pretend that I don't know what's going to happen next. They make a point that Maria Ross is dead. Now, I didn't like this when I saw it, and then they keep selling it. So, for example, the Harvey Bullock character, when he shows up and starts talking to Mustang, and Mustang really lays on thick. I'm a cold bastard. I don't care about other people. I just wanted to avenge my friend, and I was willing to do something utterly heinous in order to do it. And then again with the doctor who comes out and says, the dental records were a match. You really must have hated this gal, huh? And he's like, yep, I hated her, but I was just doing my job because that's what I do. And you're like, wow, Colonel Mustang, you are a jerk.
That's exactly what I thought. And said.
You can't go back on that. If you're going to go there, you can't go back on that. Now, there are shows that can get away with, oh, you thought they were dead, but they weren't really. Sherlock did a pretty good job of that. Primarily because we know by the end of the episode that our suspicions are correct. Instead of the filmmakers trying to convince us that, oh, yes, she really is undoubtedly dead. Don't think twice about it. She's dead as a parrot. And then go back and be like,
oh, I can't believe I was so slow to get that.
And then just be like, gotcha, surprise! The only way that I can see the writers really pulling off a gotcha with the death of Maria Ross is by being really particularly clever about the way that they save her, or more importantly, making the way that they save her important and relevant to the plot, which I think, and here I'm going to now actually admit that I know what happens in the next episode. I think that that's what they try to do. We'll get to that when we review the next episode. It doesn't work as well as it should, but I do think that the filmmakers are trying to insinuate something about Roy when he explains how he's doing this whole thing. Other big important note, Roy Mustang, even though I hate him at the end of this episode, still manages to pull me in like a spider does a fly with that line of, you know, I've really taken to fishing. Which is, of course, relevant to us because we're like, oh, he's using the same metaphor that the bad guys were at the end of the last episode. He's playing cat and mouse with the cat.
In other words, he might secretly be a cat in disguise.
Roy Mustang is a furry?
No.
Wouldn't that have made the scene different?
That would have made things a lot different, actually.
You sick monster. You killed her while dressed as a puma.
Dressed as a puma. That would have been weird. That would have been hilarious, though.
Instead of Roy Mustang saying, what? I was given orders that if I saw her, I was to shoot, so I killed her. Instead, he just goes, rawr.
This is a terrible idea.
Or
it's
maybe
great to talk about, but if they did it, I would probably hate them.
a wonderful, awful idea.
Indeed.
Final thoughts in the episode.
I liked it. Despite its flaws, I liked it.
I did too. It's the best episode that I have seen in a while. I'm not going to say it's the best episode I've seen because, guys, episode 2 was just amazing. There was one thing that I had wrong with that episode, and it was the most insignificant thing in the world.
What was it again?
The fact that they tell us the date when Trisha died. It's like, that is, if that's all that you're having to complain about, you're just looking for ways to make things better, not ways to fix things.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this episode. I know that it gets better. So I guess we'll see you all when we review episode 18, I think. Yeah, whatever. The episode after this, when we go to Xerxes. That'll be interesting. We'll see you all then.
Yes, we'll see you in the next episode when they go to Zergland. See ya.
Must destroy Buzz Lightyear. Must destroy Buzz Lightyear. Oh no, it's an alchemy circle meant specifically for cosmonauts.
This is a terrible idea for a crossover. I love it. Anyways, goodbye.
Goodbye.